So this is a big deal. We got the gray tee, we got the Einsteins on. All jokes aside, we're going to be checking out what Bushka calls a dire situation here in PUBG Mobile. I mean, the talk of the town is, of course, the 2.9 update and all the DMRs becoming full auto. What it all exactly means. Bushka makes some incredibly compelling arguments going against this 2.9 beta that we're going to go ahead and play for you guys. Of course, I'll have the original video linked down in the description. Make sure you guys go ahead and check him out. Support Bushka, man. This guy's an absolute legend in the PUBG Mobile community. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what he has to say.
A pretty dire situation, I think, and a real big mistake on the road for the game itself. This is the full auto mod. You can buy it in shops at the moment. You put it on the M16A4 and it turns the M16A4 from a single tapper, tap, tap, into a full auto just that works really well. There are some big problems with this. I'm going to tell you how you could fix this meta and make DMRs relevant in one easy step. And we'll see, if anyone listens to this.
There'll be a few. There's going to be a few.
About why this is happening. I mean, it's pretty bloody clear. The M416 meta is easy. People can spray with an M416. It also allows them to have a second weapon that they can use as a full auto weapon. So they get to spray, have a full auto weapon, and it's PUBG Mobile dumbed down. Like, anyone that doesn't think spraying is just so easy to do compared to running a DMR or a sniper rifle, which takes real effort and skill, and you've got to actually work at it, is out of their mind.
Now, this is what is most interesting to me is the fact that the M4, because of the M416 and how effective it has been since Season 1, PUBG Mobile clearly has realized that other weapons were not being used. There's a lot of guns in the game that were simply not being used because of the M416 and the whole spray meta as a whole. So they buffed DMRs because of it. They buffed sniper rifles because of it. They buffed SMGs because these weapons were not being used. And the reason they weren't being used is because of the spray meta and the effectiveness of the M4. So instead of changing the root of the problem, the not just the M4, because the Scar is in the same boat now, the AUG is in the same boat now. So instead of changing the root of the problem, which is instead of fixing the spray meta, instead they're making everything spray, which it just kind of cancels everything out. I just understand it. So now you're going to get to the point to where people, at least they shouldn't be using the M4, because now the Mini, the SKS, the SLR, the MK12, they're all going to be full auto now. So even something like the AUG isn't even going to be getting used. Why would you? If people want spray, and now the DMRs, which do more damage, have less recoil, they're easier to handle, are now also full auto. It's just, I mean, the ship has sunk. So, I mean, instead of fixing the hole, they just kept adding more water into the boat, and now it's become the Titanic.
I mean, hitting consistently with an SLR or a Mark 14 at range, or an AWM at people running past in cars, any of those things is difficult. Running an M416, lying down and pressing the button and just spraying is so much easier, and it's such a dumbed down version of the game. We had an M416 meta that was all spray, so no one used sniper rifles, so they buffed sniper rifles. And then they buffed sniper rifles again because people still weren't using them. And then they buffed DMR damage. And then they buffed some more stuff on the DMRs, bullet speed and such. And we've had sniper rifles that have gone from 700 meters a second bullet speed all the way up to 900 meters a second bullet speed. I'm looking at you, SKS and SLRs. And this is just constant, this power creep. And it's all because they won't nerf the spray meta. So they're trying to get people to use these weapons that are brilliant weapons. They're nuanced. They have their own characteristics that work in the game. And if you're good enough and you put the time in on the range, you can use them, or you can just spray.
Nice.
And you'll be fine. This is the Mini 14 without an auto mod, right? There's a guy up there on the top. I'm going to tap fire it. Here we go. That's ridiculously fast, right? And that's faster than you can run the full auto mod.
So here what he's basically saying is the tap fire weapons that are in the game are already incredibly effective. They do the job that is supposed to be done. The difference is, like you mentioned earlier, is, I mean, this goes with everything in life, really. Everybody wants easier. Are you going to pick the hard path, or are you going to pick the path of least resistance? Clearly, in PUBG Mobile, the spray meta is the path of less resistance. It is the easier thing to do. It's not challenging. You put your finger on a button, you hold it down. As long as your sensitivities are dialed in, you will hit the target and you will win. But the weapons are already good. So you don't need to touch them. You can leave them how they are. Make it to where the people that use the tap fire weapons, because they're more difficult and take more skill to use, those weapons, the players using those weapons should be rewarded. They should be rewarded with winning long-range fights, with winning mid-range fights. These tap fire DMRs should be able to beat out a full auto weapon from distance. Why? Because this is how you would reward a player that specializes in using something like a tap fire weapon, because it's harder to do. But instead, they're just giving in. They're pandering to the spray. They're pandering to the spray.
Orgs and scars and M416s, and it's gonna just give you the same playstyle with none of the skill that you get, like from M416.
Facts.
These are the easiest ways to fix this whole problem. Leave the DMRs alone. Don't touch them. The M416 at 50 meters does 40.3 damage. At 150 meters, it does 38.9. The QBU does 54.1 at 50 meters and 53.3 at 150. Imagine if the M416, the SCAR-L,
So this is basically his way, Bushka's way of solving the problem. All right, where he puts up basically a blueprint to how they can fix the game. Make it to where you don't, if you mess with the recoil, that is really going to piss people off. The majority of the player base will be very upset if you actually mess with the mechanics, the gunplay of the M4, or any, not just the M4. When I say M4, I'm talking about the SCAR, the AUG, and so on. These long-range spray weapons. So what he's proposing is, at 150 meters, drop it down to where the output damage is drastically reduced. So the gun will still feel and handle the same, but when you, from long range, 150 meters, even 200 meters, people are lying down and spraying and hitting their shots and not suffering any of the consequences. So instead, make it to where the damage is reduced. There's less damage output, which will make people think, maybe if I pick up something like the Mini and I acquire that skill of a tap fire DMR, which does more damage from range, they'll start using that. Reducing damage over distance, I think, is the best way to solve this issue, period.
AUG, the FAMAS, whatever, instead of doing 38.9 at 150 meters, did 28.9. Imagine if the bullet damage dropped so precipitously by the time you got out to 150 meters that it was taking too long to kill. Do you know what the player base would do? They would start using QBUs and Mini 14s and SKSs and SLRs and Mark 14s and
Facts.
Mark 12s and M24s and AWMs And all you'd have to do to make people use these weapons is subtract from the M416. We have buffed everything. We have buffed the SMGs multiple times. We have buffed the DMRs multiple times. We have buffed the M24s and the AWMs multiple times. Just fucking nerf the M416. Would you just do it? Would you just lower the damage over distance so that by the time you get to the ranges where you would, instead of doing this with a Mini 14, you just spray with an M4, DMRs and that, it's going to be so easy to fix. All you got to do is just
GG's.
Nerf one gun. Like, or just nerf one class of gun. Don't let the long range spray be a thing anymore. And yeah, I don't understand it. It is ridiculous to the point because, and I know people will say, oh, that's ridiculous. Why are you doing that? Like, that so sucks. Like, oh, how dare you talk about nerfing, spraying meta and all this. Here's an idea. Do you know what's going to happen when everyone just starts using these DMRs? They're just going to spray at longer ranges. And you know what's going to happen? People are going to stop using other weapons. And PUBG Mobile are going to realize this, and they're going to buff those weapons. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you right now that if this goes through, there will be buffs to other guns to make them more useful.
One thing that needs to be mentioned also is, notice that since Season 1 till now, your HP bar is the same. They haven't messed with how much health you have. They haven't messed with how much DPS your helmet and your chest can absorb. Those things are all the same. However, they've increased the DPS of all these weapons. They've increased rate of fire. And now, again, making the DMRs full auto, which is going to increase their DPS. But then another thing that people often complain about a lot is the fact that now it's to the point to where you have basically no reaction time. Once you start getting lit up, like, you're pretty much done. And then especially, when ping comes into play and, if someone has desync, there's just no more reaction time. You have to be the one to see the enemy first, because if it's the other way around, you're done. There's just no shot that you can survive with how much damage all these weapons are doing now.
Instead of just balancing the game and letting the game become more about the skill than the spray.
Oh,
I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's not going to happen. This is probably going to go ahead. It's an absolute disaster as far as I'm concerned. M416s, and they're all going to use those M416s or UMPs. There's a UMP too.
Yeah. Hey, hands off the UMP, Bushka. Hands off. Don't touch the UMP. All right. Original video link down below. Go ahead and check it out. There were a lot of parts that were cut out. Just wanted to touch on some specific points that he was trying to make. I really like that skill versus spray. I think that really sums up. I think that kind of sums up this 2.9 update that's going to be coming here in a couple weeks. So get ready, pony up. It's going to be absolutely wild.